hello geography gang, and today we're in for an absolute treat, so let's just jump straight into this one. When we think about the Apollo moon landings, images of astronauts, rockets, and mission control come to mind. But behind the scenes, an extraordinary group of women played a vital role in making it all possible. The women who crafted the spacesuits that literally kept the astronauts alive. Hazel Fellows is one such remarkable woman. She was part of the team at the International Latex Corporation, or ILC, who between 1961 and 1974 made the spacesuits worn by Apollo astronauts. These suits weren't just clothing, they were miniature spacecrafts, crafted with such precision that any small mistake could have been fatal. The women at ILC had a unique set of skills. They cut patterns, sewed fabrics together, and assembled the complex, multi-layered suits that the astronauts wore on the moon. Their craftsmanship was vital. They had to sew seams within 1/64th of an inch of accuracy. There was absolutely no margin for error. In the vacuum of space, a single misplaced stitch among the 21 layers could mean a catastrophic failure, exposing an astronaut to a dangerous pressure loss, fire, or micrometeoroid impacts. When JFK declared in 1962 that America would put a man on the moon before the decade ended, NASA faced a huge problem. There was only one spacesuit in existence fit for a purpose. Other companies had designed suits for high-pressure aircraft and adapted them for space, but these were bulky and awkward and limited astronaut mobility. NASA needed something better and faster. The pressure was on to catch up with the Soviet Union after Yuri Gagarin became the first person in space in 1961. Kennedy's 1961 speech appealed to Congress for massive funding, emphasizing the importance of taking longer strides in space and boldly declaring that cutting corners was not an option. NASA found an unexpected partner in Playtex, a company famous for bras and girdles. Their subsidiary, ILC, had been experimenting with spacesuits since 1955, years before the Apollo announcement. Unlike the big aerospace companies, ILC had an expertise in flexible fabrics and garment construction, which gave them the edge. In 1965, NASA challenged contractors to produce a new spacesuit designed with only 6 weeks' notice. The ILC rose to the challenge, developing a soft, flexible suit made largely of fabric that allowed astronauts greater mobility. This was revolutionary. ILC's project manager, Homer Ream, explained that women were hired specifically for their dexterity and agility, qualities critical for sewing with extreme precision. The field of technical jobs was dominated by men, but here women's skills were vital. Neil Armstrong himself calls the suits mini spacecrafts, emphasizing their importance. The seamstresses understood the stakes. Anne Lee Miller described her anxiety when joining the project. "They didn't tell me a thing. They brought me up here. I went home on many nights and cried, and I knew I couldn't do it. I was scared. This was a person's life that depended on it." The seamstresses' knowledge of textiles blended with innovative engineering. They built strict processes to ensure everything could be sewn by hand with perfect accuracy. For example, Francine Burris refused to allow electric scissors when cutting the mylar layer in the thermal micrometeoroid garment. She knew speeds would compromise control, so every cut was deliberate, and talking on the floor was forbidden to maintain focus. Wasted materials were costly, so every inch counted. Jean Wilson, taught to sew by her mother and only 19 years old when she started, described the painstaking process. Every time you sewed a seam, it had to be inspected and checked. Even though there were 21 layers, the thickness was almost hairline, and the material cost nearly $3,000 per yard. It was literally locked away in a safe. After assembly, the finished suits were taken to a hospital in Delaware for x-rays to check for any stray pins or metal pieces. "You'd go home and wonder, did I leave a pin in?" Wilson said. The responsibility was huge. Even a tiny mistake could be deadly. The women specialized in different parts. Some sewed torsos, arms, and legs, whilst others focused on boots or gloves. Each astronaut had custom molded hand casts made for their gloves, which included an accordion-like fabric ridges called convolutes to allow finger movement. "We had to make seam samples to be tested until they tore," said Joanne Thompson. "We made them all day knowing they'd be trashed, but we kept going because a man's life depended on it." Even after Apollo, the women's work remained critical. In 1973, a year after Apollo ended, America's first space station, Skylab, suffered a catastrophic failure when its heated shield tore off during launch. Without a shield, astronauts could not enter due to dangerously high temperatures. NASA urgently needed a replacement, and Eileen Baker was called upon to help. She worked on sewing a massive, lightweight heat shield, 22 feet by 24 feet, made of thin layers of aluminium, mylar, and nylon. Known as the parasol, it folded up and deployed through an airlock like an umbrella. The replacement heat shield saved Skylab. A famous photo of Eileen at her sewing machine was surrounded by the voluminous material is displayed at NASA's Johnson Space Center, where she and her son Herbert Baker worked. In January 1967, a tragic fire during the ground test of Apollo 1 capsule killed astronauts Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee. The pure oxygen atmosphere inside the capsule ignited in an instant, burning the crew. Afterward, the ILC team revamped the suits to eliminate flammable materials. Inspections became even stricter. Every pin was accounted for with colour-coded pins assigned to seamstresses, ensuring nothing was left inside the suits. Astronauts even pinned their faces to the suits with notes like, "Please sew straight and careful, because I'd hate to have to tear my pants on the moon." This reminder of the stakes motivated women to work with extreme care. The women worked long hours, often weekends, dedicated to perfecting every suit. Astronauts sometimes visited the factory to thank them, boosting morale and creating a personal connection. One memorable incident happened just 3 days before Apollo 17's launch in December 1972. A spacesuit was badly damaged and there was no backup. The most experienced seamstress for that part, Roberta Pilkington, was flown to Florida with a briefcase handcuffed to her wrist, carrying the neoprene leg joint, urgently needing repair. Though terrified of flying, Pilkington worked tirelessly from 4 a.m. until midnight, completing the repair and saving the mission. On July 20th, 1969, the day the world watched Neil Armstrong take his first historical step on the moon, the seamstresses held their breath too. Lily Elliott recalled, "When he put his foot on the moon, my heart was in my throat. I was thinking, hope that stitch didn't pop." Meanwhile, Home Marine and Mission Control was more pragmatic. When Buzz Aldrin started running around, I was thinking, corral that guy, lock him up, let's declare the success and get inside. For many of these women, working on the Apollo program was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Ruth Anna Ratledge said, "We enjoyed every bit of it, every stitch. I would do it all over again if I could." Joanne Thompson added, "I'm still amazed. It was great." President Kennedy had said in 1961, "It will not be one man going to the moon, it will be an entire nation." Indeed, the seamstresses were part of an estimated 400,000 people who helped to land 12 astronauts on the moon. The women who made the Apollo spacesuits were more than seamstresses, they were engineers of survival. Their unmatched precision and dedication held together not just the fabric, but the hopes and dreams and safety of humanity's greatest explorers. When Neil Armstrong stepped onto the lunar surface, it wasn't just his footsteps making history, it was the countless stitches made with care and precision by the woman whose work was vital as any rocket engine. And that's the story of the women who made the spacesuits. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please like if you liked and subscribe for more. I bring out new episodes every Tuesday.